Bloody hell. Hello everybody. So what you been up to for over a year and a half? Didn't think you'd see me again now, would you? You thought this would be the last time that you would see me. Well, of course it isn't. After all, I've got more work to do and more shows to go and see. Surprise! I'm back, everybody! Hello there, my name is Jack Wright. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Once again, my name is Jack Wright, known as Jackpot Button Lewis on YouTube, and welcome to the very first episode of the brand new second series of my theatre blog series of Theatregoing. Now, just before we get on with the very first episode of the brand new look second series on my theatre blog series, just for a reminder, as for any of you who haven't watched my series before, let me tell you a little bit of what it's all about. Basically, Theatregoing, if you want to know why, of course, that's the name of the title of my series, it's basically a phrase or even term to describe people who love going to the theatre. Normally they're known as theatregoers, but normally when someone would normally go and see a show and have to travel as well, that's also known as theatregoing. So that's how it came about. But also as well, the name of and also title for the show of Theatregoing was inspired by two of my favourite films, which are Trainspotting and T2 Trainspotting. And of course, I've actually got both of them on DVD. Of course, one of my cousins actually got me the original version of Trainspotting, which unbelievably, this film actually, of course, marked its 20th anniversary last year, since it was released back in 1996, when I was only 2 years old, would you believe? That's absolutely crazy. And of course, earlier on this year, I also got the sequel film of T2 Trainspotting, which unbelievably came out earlier out this year, in January. But of course, I also managed to get it on DVD from Sainsbury's, and it only just was released just a few months ago. So, of course, like I just said, and also since I actually decided to base my series on the film of well, I wouldn't say Theatregoing, but of course, that is the name of the show, but also an element of trains also, or travelling, of course, to shows, buying, of course, trains, is a very key element to, of course, the series. Anyway, enough about that, of course, for any of you who have just joined me, of course, on the second series of, once again, my theatre blog series of Theatregoing. Let's get on with today's main part, and that is the very first episode of this brand new look second series. So, following on from the very first series of my theatre blog series of Theatregoing, which unbelievably I'd done back in the autumn of last year with my very first reviews of Murder Ballads and also The Last 5 Years, I now decided to give it a brand new fresh look, and also I did do some things that I wasn't really proud of, so I decided to, of course, do a second series and start afresh. Now, if you might remember watching my preview video of the second series and what to expect from it, one of the things that I did mention is that I'm not just going to go and see, well, of course, continue going to see musicals and also plays all across the UK, but any, of course, event that is all to do with the arts, such as singing, music, dancing, even art itself. I am actually going to challenge myself this time, especially this year, and try and see as many, of course, art events that I can possibly can. And exactly for the very first time 2 weeks ago today, I actually got the opportunity to go to my very first singing event. But also, you could classify it as a concert as well. And this one is I've never thought it would be so big, because I got the opportunity to meet someone very famous who was a very famous actor who has conquered the world of Hollywood with some incredible films, not to mention his very first one that he, of course, won an Academy Award for and also an Oscar for Best Actor, and that film was Gladiator. It was filmed back in 1999 and then was released a year after in 2000, and this year marks its 70th anniversary of its release. And for the first time in years I watched it, and it was incredible. Such an amazing story, very emotional, and the music by the incredible Hans Zimmer in the film was just amazing. And of course, not just that, this person has gone on to star in some of the most biggest films, like I've said already, and one of them in particular was, lo and behold, the musical version of Les Miserables. Now, you might remember, of course, a very familiar face who I'm a big fan of course, Samantha Barks, which, lo and behold, if you have not, of course, seen already, right behind me, I have got, of course, a cardboard cutout of her. Now, but I'm just going to go off topic here for a moment, but if you want to know why I actually got that, just last year, when I actually went to see her do her very first, of course, that was her UK tour, and of course releasing her very first album, I actually, on the day of my birthday, on the 6th of June, I actually saw a cardboard cutout of her, and when it was in the living room of my house, of course, exactly my house here, and when I walked into the living room, I literally had a shock, because I thought it was actually really her. But I couldn't believe it. But lo and behold, guys, what she's wearing is the dress that she wore at the film premiere night of when the film came out. Exactly 5 years ago, would you believe, since it came out on Christmas Day in 2012. And also around that time, also in 2012, that's when Samantha Barks also was part of the children's programme. That's what, of course, she done with Jonathan Bailey, which I mentioned previously in my last series, when I reviewed, of course, the last 5 years, the musical of Groove High. Anyway, of course, enough, of course, going off topic. If you don't know who I'm on about, this person, this actor I'm talking about is Russell Crowe. And in today's episode of Theatregoing, I'm reviewing when I got the opportunity to see him not just, of course, act, but also to show off his singing skills. As if you did not know, he used to sing before he actually started acting in films. And I'm reviewing when I went to see his indoor garden party at the Union Chapel in London. Now, as I just said, of course, most of you do know Russell Crowe for being in a lot of big blockbuster Hollywood films, but most people did not know that he's actually a very good singer. Now, I know a lot of you out there who might have seen him when he played the character of Javert in the musical version of Les Miserables. I know that a load of people gave him some stick for not being a good singer. Well, in fact, I was exactly one of those people that I didn't honestly think he was a very good singer back 5 years ago when I saw it for, I think it was about the second or third time when I saw the film. And literally when I found out that he was actually going to be bringing, of course, his band Indoor Garden Party to the UK, because lo and behold, they actually have performed before, but they got the first time they performed, they got the opportunity to perform on Broadway in New York in America, and also the same year when the film of Les Miserables first came out. And Russell Crowe is the main, of course, part of the band, as he actually came up with the idea for it. But lo and behold, the band actually had been around for a lot more longer than you might think, but they never really took off. So, as like I've said already, 5 years ago in 2012 was the official time where of course, the Indoor Garden Party band was born from Russell. And of course, he's not just involved, like I've just said, since it is a band. A load of people had been part of his band. American actor known as Scott Grimes, who you might know as being, of course, a very famous voiceover artist and also a very famous actor in the shows of ER and American Dad. Also, you have Canadian singer and songwriter that is, I'm trying to remember his name now, Alan Doyle, there we go, I'm just going to say, and he actually wrote some of the songs for the band with Russell. And also you have, well, actually, lo and behold, Sam was part of the very first indoor garden party. But unfortunately, I think it's a good time for almost so to mention this now, that unfortunately she will not get the opportunity to be performing with Russell this year, because sadly, lo and behold, she actually got told that she was going to do something very, very special. A little bit more about that later on in this episode. And the other last few people that to, of course, be part of Russell's brand the second time round was Irish singer and songwriter Lorraine O'Reilly, and also Swedish songwriter that is Carl Falk. Anyway, as I've just said already, that was the members of his band, and I got the amazing opportunity to travel down to London once again to the Union Chapel when I got a chance to meet them. Now, and I know this does sound a little bit weird, guys, but there is not much footage that I managed to get, of course, of when I went to see the show, and there's a very good reason why, because there's the venue where we got the chance to see them also perform did actually have a very strict rule, of course, of not any pictures or also photos. And, well, as I just said, I already said pictures and photos, but also video footage as well. So it was very, very, of course, difficult to try and get footage. But lo and behold, when actually people were actually watching the band perform, they actually did manage to sneak out video cameras or also mobile phones, actually. Well, I did just say, of course, video cameras, but they weren't allowed. I do apologise for saying that anyway. But it was a fantastic show, and from what I do remember, that I also, lo and behold, I actually managed to get a VIP package, along with, of course, my dad, who actually took me there, and we travelled down to London by train to go and see them, and it was an incredible night. But also, I do have, like I said already, I've got footage of some of the band performing some of their songs, and some of the songs from their recent album of the musical was incredible. Or to say, of course, were or was incredible. Now, if you've never heard of Indoor Garden Party perform, well, guys, you are in for a treat. As, of course, as like I've just said, I've got a few bits of footage from that night when I went to see the show of a few of the performances that you will be, of course, seeing or even actually hearing some of the music from the band actually recorded on the night when we went there. Yes, I know it's not much, guys, but it was the most that I could get from that evening. So without further ado, here are just a few of the clips and also video and audio footage of from when we went to see Russell Crowe's Indoor Garden Party at the Union Chapel just 2 weeks ago today on the 28th of September.
The oarsmen all aboard, well serviced lose my mind. See the kids in the street without enough to eat. Who am I to be blind, pretending not to see their needs? Summer's disregard, broken bottle top, and one man's soul. They follow each other all the way you know, 'cause they got nowhere to go. That's why I want you to know I'm stuck in with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Na 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 na. Been thinking about the selfish kind of love. Sorry, the time that I realized that there was some with no hope, not a river to love. Could it be, really be, pretending that you're not alone? Oh, well, deep the sky, somebody broke his heart and washed down the street. They follow the pattern of the wind you see, 'cause they got no place to be. That's why I've done it with me. I'm stuck in with the man in the mirror. Oh, yes, I'm asking him to change his ways. But no mistakes could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. You gotta get it right. What you got to do when you go to make it move right. Yeah, I'm asking him to change his ways. No mistakes could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Na 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 na. Come on, last one more time. You're gonna make a change. Na 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 na. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for your stuff here. Beautiful, beautiful job. It's very special. Thanks very much, folks. Cheers. Bye.
Well, there you go, everybody. I know that wasn't much, but that is the most of the footage that I managed to get, video and also audio, from Russell Crowe's indoor garden party when I went to see it at the Union Chapel once again on the 28th of September, 2 weeks ago today. And it was a fantastic show. Literally all the songs, and of course the band sung, that not just Russell sang but also Scott and also Lorraine. They've done duets in between, and it's amazing on how some of the names of the songs actually, how they got their names, and also the story behind them, because that's what's so great about, you know, certain pieces of music. They actually do tell a story or something that did actually happen in like someone's life. And that was actually a big thing with most of the songs that were, of course, performed by the band and not just by Russell himself. And not just that, also, of course, if I had not said already, also, he wasn't just there, but if you did actually happen to see him earlier on in the video, Tom Fletcher from the very, very famous pop band that is, of course, McFly, he also was there as a special guest to perform with the band, And it was the very first time I actually had seen him for a long time, because normally I do remember him being in McFly from many years ago, when I think he was about his early 20s, kind of like my age, I'd say, back all those years ago when he actually started performing and also being part of a band for the very first time. It was fantastic, though. The venue was brilliant. The music was so catchy. Everyone was clapping, and of course they were stamping their feet. It just felt like you were basically at like a smaller version of an actual garden party with, of course, a band. Or it was like you were in a pub with a band that plays like loads of folk music, and, you know, by the end of the night you're just singing along and just reminiscing, of course, just having a wonderful time and just remembering those songs that were being sung by that band. It literally had so much to it. Literally, I think one of the songs that you did just hear earlier on, called, which was Fight Another Day, it sounded very similar to the song of Castle on the Hill by Ed Sheeran, which is one of my favourite songs at the moment, which he did actually release earlier on this year. And actually, strangely enough, also, if you had not known also, I actually initially was going to, of course, do a review of course, her show, but I also happened to go and see Rachel Tucker quite recently also, and she actually released a version of that very same song, I was going to actually say, of Castle on the Hill, like I said already, and she released it as a single as part of her second album, which is On the Road. But of course, as I said, I didn't get the chance to do that, but there was just so much to it. I can literally go on and on about the show for hours, of course, in Russell Crowe's Indoor Garden Party, but I don't want, of course, to bore you too much. But that's not all, guys. I actually, of course, despite that was the end, but actually I can tell you a quick true story before I've got a few other things to show you from what I actually got from the show, since I got a VIP package when we went to see the band. And that was when we actually got the chance to meet the band. We actually were on a very tight time schedule, me and John, my dad, because we only had about like 20 minutes or so. I think it was about 10 o'clock in the evening, and of course the trains, or also the London Underground, is normally very busy on a weekday normally, and this was a weekday since it was on a Thursday. Of course, the day that when we went there, the traffic was horrendous, and literally the travel, of course, to get there was, I mean, we had no problems getting there, but to get back, that was also a challenge in itself. So when we actually were meeting the band, like I said, we were on a tight time schedule, and we only managed to spend about like 5 minutes or so with the band, and we were literally watching our watches all the time, because we don't normally, of course, we're not normally clock watchers, but we couldn't miss, of course, one of the underground trains. As soon as we met the band, we made a mad dash to one of the underground stations, but lo and behold, as soon as we got to, of course, the underground station that I can't remember exactly where it was Highbury and Islington, there we go, just remembered now, just off from the top of my head, and we just managed to catch the train as soon as it came in. And as I said, if we didn't actually catch that train, we would have had to wait until, I think, was it 7 o'clock tomorrow morning on that night when we actually went to see the band for the next one, because that was the very last one to go through the line that we were on, which was the Victoria line. And that was something very nerve-wracking, and that's never happened before. We've never had a close call like that before, and it's such a shame that had to happen, because initially we were going to, of course, drive by car and, of course, travel there by car. Of course, my dad was going to take us in, of course, his Aston Martin V8 Vantage. If I have not mentioned, he has got one there, which is a very nice car indeed. Or to go and see the show, but unfortunately parking around the venue of Union Chapel was not very good at all, so literally we couldn't have managed to travel by car even if we tried. So it was but it was very of course nerve-wracking, and I was literally sweating, of course, if you did not see me, of course, with the band. That lovely picture, of course, which initially I was actually going to show you once again when I actually met the band as part of my VIP package, which I will do very, very shortly. And of course, I all dress for the occasion, including this beard as well, which I know I don't normally have, but there's a very good reason why I have this for. But you might have to, you might find out in a. Of course, that's completely off topic, so just forget about that anyway. But as I said, of course, it was a fantastic night nevertheless, even though apart from that very close call of just managing to catch that final train to then getting a late one back home. And we didn't actually arrive back home until midnight. So obviously to actually try and review the show, obviously right after when we went to see it, it was very difficult. And I know I had quite a few drinks as well as part of it. It was such a great evening. But unfortunately, that wasn't to be, sadly. So, and also, just last week, also, I didn't feel too up to scratch as well, because I've been coming down with a cold recently, and that's the reason why, of course, this video is a little bit more later than, of course, expected. Because initially, I was going to tell you earlier on in the episode, but I think now that's also another good reason why this has come out quite late. So I do thoroughly apologise for obviously this episode being out a lot more later than of course scheduled. But anyway, enough about that. Let of course me show you what I actually got from the concert. And I actually, as once again, as I said, as having a VIP of course package to the show, I actually got a lovely goodie bag. Of course, as you can see, I actually got a VIP bag with the name of the logo, of course the logo to the band as well. Hang on, I'll just try and get out of the way. It's a little bit fiddly here since it's falling out of place. There you go. I can just quickly show you there. Russell Crowe's Indoor Garden Party VIP 2017. And I actually got a few things in here that I can show you that I actually got exclusively, not just from the band, but a few other things as well. So first of all, I actually got a picture of the logo of the band with some autographs, as you can see. I think Russell Crowe's and also Carl Falk's and Scott Grimes' autographs are on there. That does look fantastic, doesn't it? I initially didn't know which one was which when I first saw it, but when I first looked at this, but it does look fantastic. So there we go. That's one of the things I got. And also I have my lanyard that I also got. Also my dad got one of these as well, which obviously we had to wear as part of the VIP, of course, package. And also on the back it also has the dates of all the events, all the, of course, part of the tour, because it actually was a tour, this concert, actually, when it was being performed. The first one was, we actually went to the very first night at the Union Chapel in London. Then straight after, on Friday, the 29th of September, they travelled down to Leeds to the City Varieties Music Hall, and then they finished off at the Olympia in Dublin, Ireland on Sunday, the 1st of October. And, of course, this is, it didn't have no backstage access, no entry without ticket, and non-transferable when you had this VIP thing. But it was the very first time I got a VIP pass to something, and this was very, very special. So, and that's a great little souvenir that I'll remember from this, of course, going to that event. And also, I think this is actually one of the most special things, but also it's a very, very expensive and precious item that I got, especially from the tour. And that is this beautiful, I have to be very careful with this because it's glass actually here, so I have to be very, very careful. I think I can try and take it out very gently here, as once again, as I said, I need to be very, very careful here. And it's actually a beautiful engraved glass, a flute glass that I actually got exclusively from all the band members. And as you can see also, that also has, I'll just make sure I can get it close to the camera so you can see, and it has, once again, Russell Crowe's Indoor Garden Party VIP 2017 on the front. It does look absolutely beautiful. I've never actually drank anything out of this just yet, since I've just took it out of the box, but I'll definitely use it. I think actually maybe for the new year actually. I think it makes actually a very good glass to put champagne in, so actually once again I'll keep that very, of course, safe in this box, which it comes with, and as I said, I can get it out for that time when, of course, the new year comes around. So there we go, everybody. That's most of the souvenirs and also things that I got from the show. But also, not just that, I even still have the tickets from when I went to see the show as well. They're just in here. I mean, there you go. There's, of course, both my dad and John, and, of course, my, tickets to the show. And also I have, well, also while we were there, we've also as part, like a bit of promotion as well, we've also got a guide of the upcoming events at the Union Chapel, and that came of course, that was given to one of the people who actually works there, so that was pretty nice as well. Anyway, so and also, I completely forgot actually. Let me just put this bag on the floor just so it's out the way. And initially, of course, since we didn't have a lot of time with, of course, the band members at the end, I initially, because I just to, of course, take a risk, just to see, of course, if anyone, you know, if I had enough time, if we actually, of course, if we struggled if we managed to get a lot more time than from just running after, of course, that very late train at the end, like I mentioned earlier on in the Underground in London, I actually was going to ask Russell to sign this beautiful picture that I actually printed out, and that's actually him as the character of Inspector Javert and one of the outfits he wears from the film version of Les Miserables. And honestly, like I said, I didn't know what to expect from him when I first actually, you know, met him. He was such a lovely guy, though, and I actually cracked a few jokes about one of the lines that he says as the character Javert in the film, and of course is my name's Javert. Oh yeah, so well, I'm trying to think how he says it now. Is it? Oh yeah, and I'm Javert. Do not forget my name. And basically, what I said to him was, I know you're Javert, and I'll never forget your name. And he actually then called me a witty man after that, and to get that from him was amazing. And I actually shook his hand twice, would you believe? And that was incredible. I had a lovely little chat with him about, of course, being quite nostalgic of some of the films I watched from him. Gladiator was the very first film that I mentioned earlier on in this, of course, episode of when actually that's when I first came across him as an actor. And as I said, also, I'm a massive fan of the musical Les Miserables, as you do know, of course, not just being, of course, a fan of Samantha Barks, who, of course, I've mentioned in previous episodes, but like I said already, she didn't be, of course, she sadly... Oh, excuse me, I do apologise, I did actually belch there. I just actually took a drink, of course, just off while you actually saw a bit of the show earlier on. But anyway, of course, like I was actually just mentioning about Samantha Barks, there's a very good reason why that she wasn't part of that very night, of course, or performance that we actually went to see back 2 weeks ago. And now I can tell you all about it in the very first ever exclusive here on, of course, my second series of Theatregoing. Well, I bet you weren't expecting that, were you guys? Well, of course, like I said already, it's our very first exclusive here on Theatregoing, where I can tell you exclusively what she has got planned and what was actually mentioned during the time when I went to see the show. And if you did not know already, Lorraine O'Reilly did take over from Samantha's part in the show. And there's a very good reason why she, of course, stood in for Sam. And the reason is, she's actually bagged herself a part in a upcoming musical adaptation of the very famous film Pretty Woman. And, of course, it is the film that made the star Julia Roberts and is being adapted into a stage musical with songs co-written by Bryan Adams and is aiming to open on Broadway next autumn after a spring run in Chicago. The musical is to feature Steve Kazee, I think that's how you say his name, and he's a Tony Award-winning star of the musical of Once, as Edward Lewis, the businessman played on film by Richard Gere, as well as Samantha Barks making her Broadway debut as the character of Vivian, the prostitute character played by Mrs. Julia Roberts. And Miss Barks is well known once again, for any of you who don't know her already, as of course playing the character of Eponine in the musical 2002 film adaptation of Les Miserables. Pretty Woman, a romantic comedy about the unexpected love that develops between Edward and Vivian, was a hit when it was released on film in 1990 and grossed over $463 million worldwide. Musical adaptations of films are always a Broadway staple, with this year examples being The Band's Visit, Frozen and Mean Girls. And the stage adaptation of Pretty Woman features a book by Gary Marshall, the film's director who died last year, and J.F. Lawton, the film's screenwriter, and the music and lyrics are by Mr. Bryan Adams, the Canadian pop star, and his longtime collaborator Jim Vallance. And Jerry Mitchell will direct and choreograph the show, as he's won also Tony Awards for choreographing La Cage aux Folies and Kinky Boots. And the musical's lead producer will be Paula Wagner, which is dubbed as the Heiress. The Chicago production at the Oriental Theatre is to begin performances on March the 13th next year in 2018 and to run for 5 weeks, and the Broadway production is to begin in the fall of next year, once again like I said, of 2018 at an unspecified Nederlander Theatre. And the story of Pretty Woman is often compared of that in Pygmalion, and that is the George Bernard Shaw play that inspired My Fair Lady, which is scheduled to be revived on Broadway also this spring. So there you go, everybody. That is our exclusive, of course, look on That's the Reason Why. Samantha Barks will sadly not, of course, be part of. Also, that was not just the very first show of Indoor Garden Party. She couldn't make any of the dates because of being given that opportunity. But that is incredible, and when I found out that news, I couldn't be any more happy for her. But I think, actually, to be quite honest, since that was just said that she was making her Broadway debut, I don't think that's right, to be quite honest. I'm not going against, of course, this is an article that came from an American newspaper website, and I do know that, strangely enough, that she has appeared on Broadway before, Samantha Barks, a few years ago. She actually done of course, stage musical adaptation of the very famous French film of Emily. And lo and behold, one of the songs from that musical, which is Stay, that also featured on her debut studio album. And of course, also on the topic of albums, not just of course Samantha Barks' album, but also if you want to listen to more of the songs from Indoor Garden Party, you can. All you have to do is search up Indoor Garden Party, the musical, on iTunes, and it's up there right now. You can also get it on amazon.co.uk, and it's priced at £12.99. And unbelievably, I actually found out from when we went to see the show 2 weeks ago today that it actually went to #1 as the best-selling album on, of course, Amazon, which sounds incredible. When I actually heard Russell say that, that was literally unbelievable, and I can't believe they've had so much success, and so, of course, very good, so well-deserving for, of course, Russell's band, because literally, I never thought I honestly was not expecting what they were going to do on that night, and literally, it would be something I'll never forget for a long, long, long time. And of course, also, there's one little thing that I also will never forget, and that is, of course, the picture that I had with the band. And I can just quickly show you before we, of course, go for today's episode. And here it is, everybody. I'll make sure I try and get it in the shot there. There you go. There I am, of course, with the pinstriped suit on there, right next to Russell Crowe, the legendary actor and producer. Of course, he actually has produced quite a few films, as well as starring himself in a lot of films, but also, of course, now as a singer and songwriter, and literally, he was incredible. And that's Scott Grimes on the far right, next to him is Alan Doyle. I was just trying to remember his name there again. And then it's myself, Russell, Carl Falk is next to him, next to Russell, and then right on the far right at the end, that's Lorraine O'Reilly, Irish singer and songwriter. That was a beautiful picture though, even though that was done at a very, very tight time, obviously, when I had to catch a train. I know I've mentioned that so many times. Literally, the theme of trains has actually been a big part of this series. And now, of course, I've had a little event, of course, with when I actually went to see that show. But hopefully, that won't happen again. Well, that's it, everybody. We have finally come to the end, and with that, like I just said, we had to pull the curtain down on the very first episode of Theatregoing Series 2, but I hope you have enjoyed it, and once again, like I said earlier on in this episode, I'm so sorry that, of course, this couldn't be out a lot more sooner, but hopefully, this is, of course, not just the end, of course, of this episode. But if you think this is just the end, oh no, this is just the very beginning, because we have got a load of fantastic events lined up for the remainder of the year, even though, of course, I know that I mentioned that when I released my second series of Theatregoing here on YouTube, I was going to bring it out earlier on this, of course, year in August and September, and I know it's in October now, but, of course, like I said, I know that I've been very busy with a load of things, and I hope to, this time, upload a episode, hopefully straight after when I've gone to see a show. And maybe, you never know, just as a little teaser for you, I might be actually doing a live video on the very same day, because normally, if you did not know, when I do these episodes of Theatregoing, I normally, of course, do the in-between parts of when I talk about the show and then review it. But also, when I go and see the show, regardless of whatever it is, that's the time when I actually went to see it, and normally it's just a few days after when I film these bits in between. Anyway, now, of course, if you did not know, initially, when I reviewed these shows here on Theatregoing, I didn't originally introduce this the first time round, but since I have talked about the show and reviewed it, I also forgot to give it a rating. Now, of course, as you do know, of course, when people review shows on, of course, here, or even on the internet, they normally put a star rating, or even just have a word to describe what it was. But if I could describe how, of course, how good this show was, literally, I think it would be given a first class. I think, yeah, a first class there to clarify that and make sure I say that properly. And I would give it 5 stars out of 5. It's literally was such an incredible show. The songs were so beautifully written, and it was a great night of all-round entertainment by Russell and his incredible band. And literally, it was something that I will never forget. And I hope, definitely, it will. The band will come back and also perform in the UK once again. Anyway, well, of course, with that is the end of today's episode of Theatregoing here on YouTube. And I know it's been, of course, it wasn't not expected. It was kind of unexpected with not a lot of footage from the event when I went there to see it with, once again, my dad, John Wright. But if you have enjoyed this episode, give this a like, comment down below for your thoughts, and once again, please subscribe for the upcoming episodes of the series. Literally, like I said already, if this may be the end of the first episode, but there are still loads of very exciting events that I've actually got planned to go and see. And literally, this is not just the end, like I said. This is only just the beginning. You've got some incredible things lined up for of course, not just me, of course, to go and see, but you guys are also going to witness them with me, and you're going to be joining me as I travel all across, once again, the United Kingdom, not just going to see plays and musicals, but any, of course, events that are based around the arts. And now, to play us out of today's episode of Theatregoing, it's straight from, of course, their brand new album of the musical, Russell Crowe's Indoor Garden Party, and we now have the amazing song sang by, unbelievably, Samantha Barks, who actually recorded it originally with Scott Grimes, and the song is Out of Range. I hope you enjoy, everyone, and once again from me, Jack Wright, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time for the next episode of Series 2 of, once again, my theatre blog series, that is Theatregoing. Until then, au revoir, adios, au wiedersehen. See you next time. Goodbye. Take it away, Scott and Samantha.
Start with the step you don't want to take, he said. Walk with a purpose that you won't forget. Meet yourself when you leave those other dreams behind. Lift your eyes, there's a fire in the sky. You thought it died 10,000 miles away, filling in the gaps of my yesterdays, waving to the other souls who've come this way. I'll find a home. I'm out of town, I'm out of state, I'm out of my mind, but that feels great. I'm out of anger, I'm out of pain, I'm so out of there, I'm out of range, I'm out of range. Start with the step that begins a journey of a million things. A static life is a wasted gift. Meet yourself when you leave those other dreams behind. Lift your eyes, there's a fire in the sky. You thought it died 10,000 miles away, filling in the gaps of my yesterdays. Learning nothing can be the best thing to say. Home is gonna be. I'm out of town, I'm out of state, I'm out of my mind, but that feels great. I'm out of anger, I'm out of pain, I'm so out of there, I'm out of range, I'm out of range. Under these stars, the best parts of you will always be in my life. Under these seas, live new dreams, words cannot justify. Under these stars, the best parts of you will always be in my life. Oh, under this moon shines a man who won't be giving up anytime soon. I'm out of town, I'm out of state, I'm out of my mind, but that feels great. I'm out of anger, I'm out of pain, I'm so out of there, I'm out of range. I'm out of my mind, but that feels great. I'm out of anger, I'm out of pain, I'm so out of there, I'm out of range. Start with the step you don't want to take, he said. Walk with a purpose that you won't forget. I'm out of town, I'm out of state, I'm out of my mind, but that feels great. I'm out of anger, I'm out of pain, I'm so out of there, I'm out of range. I'm out of my mind, but that feels great. I'm out of anger, I'm out of pain, I'm so out of there, I'm out of range. Start with the step you don't want to take, he said. Walk with a purpose that you won't forget.